Hello, this is Debbie McAllister, and this is Light Up Your Worth. So excited for you to meet today's guest. My friend Kelly McCarthy is a universal energy guide and an animal communicator. You guys heard that right. If you've heard me talk, you know that I'm an animal lover and that Miss Lily is always here with the podcast and in spirit, her brother Blue. So, Kelly is an expert in understanding energetic frequencies and how we imprint and impact the world, whether consciously or unconsciously. She's a former restaurant owner and the mother of two, and she was caught up in this frantic energy of always trying to stay one step ahead, struggling to juggle both personal and professional life with the need to slow down. Can't we all resonate with that? After a hospital stay, the clinical world would call a breakdown. Kelly saw it as a breakthrough to learn from the variety of modalities to help her remember her connection to her ancestors and the power of harnessing universal energy. As a spiritual leader in the holistic community, she was called to create her own business beyond words and wisdom, where she shares her knowledge through writing for publications as Brain Magazine, speaking, teaching, and sharing universal energy sessions. And as we go into it, we'll share more about the magic behind Kelly. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited. I think anybody who's listened to a podcast on some of these podcasts, you've heard Lily. And last year in season one, I had her brother, 11-year-old Blue, who has since passed over to the Rainbow Bridge. And so she is always here in every single podcast that has ever been done. And so um I used to kind of warn people about it. Like I try to mute the recording, but sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. And but it's such a beautiful thing knowing that I have my sweet 9-year-old pup here. And so anyway, so welcome, Kelly, because I'm a huge animal person. And when I started looking for people to bring on, I thought, I've always had this special relationship with certain animals and like this really deep connection, and felt like they were talking to me and like heart to heart, so that when it was their time was done here was um oh, I can feel the emotion, how hard it is, when they're no longer here. And many years ago when I lived out in Colorado, I was there healing from the end of my 20-year relationship. And I had a pup named Shiloh, this little, like, probably 40-pound year old little black mix kind of dog. And she went everywhere with me. And when I was there, I had this huge, it's when I became the next level Reiki master. I was in right next to Boulder. And so I had access to like the breathing and bowls and the natural lands there. And I really started opening up to a whole different new level. And I think this was back in like 2006. And my dog got sick and she ended up, passing. And she passed in 2007. And after she passed, I moved back to California. And as right towards the end, what I realized is that I worked with my Reiki master when she passed that day. I had a session with her and I said, I need help. And she offered, actually, knowing that it would be her day. And we had a session where I was able to witness my dog Shiloh's transformation into
Mm,
the other side, and
mm,
who she really was, this amazing like angel who had come to help me through
mhm.
that whole end of the relationship, and to be there when I went through the really super, when I was really getting really deep in the healing, and she was there, and that she absorbed and took that toxic energy from me, and she absorbed it in her own body to help me heal. And I didn't expect to get all teary, but it was so powerful. And I don't know why I'm sharing that. It just came to me as we were connecting, and I thought, you know, what was that, with your experience and everything of how you're dealing with um working with, animals and being able to communicate with them. I mean, I know I didn't make that up, because I'm so spiritual and I know that was a real connection and I know that really happened, but there's still no, you know, I don't know. What do you get from that? I guess I'll just throw that out there. Like I share this thing. I missed that girl took me years to heal through, like it was like losing my child for me,
I get it. I get it. So first, let me just start out by saying I'm absolutely honored to be the bridge for the human and animal connection for those of us who have forgotten our gifts in our ability to communicate with all beings. We all have this gift. We're just conditioned through our lifetimes to forget the beautiful spiritual beings we are born as. And we end up in this human experience. And then people call on people like me who have been reawakened and remember those gifts. So I am always honored to share. I can say this about animals. Animals are purely energetic frequencies. And the difference between animals and humans is that humans have an ego. So, with our human ego, we often question things. We often try to figure things out. We need tangible evidence. We want to see, we want to feel, we want to touch. And animals aren't like that. It's why energy work with animals is so fluid and so natural and so beautiful, is because they don't require touch. They actually prefer not to be touched, and they like to be invited into the space because they know what they need and where they need it more than we with our human egos think. And the more that we think and the more we try to connect, the more we're actually creating resistance, believe it or not. It's
Oh,
not the human mind that knows what is needed, it's the heart space. And animals see into our souls. They are the windows to the souls of us, which is why they often pick up our physical ailments and they pick up our emotional states and they manifest them within their own bodies. So oftentimes I have clients that will call me because they have a problematic dog. Let me first say that very rarely is it a problematic dog. It's usually the environment that the dog is in that is creating the issues that I see mostly with behavioral issues of animals. And especially when it comes to bringing in new babies or stress from work or fighting spouses or fighting children. Animals, again, they connect to energy and only energy. They don't understand the words we are saying, the words we are speaking. They connect to the energetic frequency behind the words. So you can say whatever you want to an animal. If you are in this high tone and, oh, you can, but you can be using low frequency words.
mhm.
They're going by the frequency, not the words. So you can call them a little crap. I mean, you could swear at them, but if you're coming from this kind of attitude, your animal is picking up on that energy. It's why you see so many animals cower when it comes to the way that people speak. So it's the energetic frequency behind the words, not the word itself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
animals,
Mhm.
yeah. So animals are natural born healers and teachers. And what I found in my career is that usually our animals tend to be one more than another. So in your case, your dog was a true healer for you that spent the time needed, took in all that you needed him to take. He was very masculine energy. I don't know if it was a male or female, but he's coming through as
Oh,
very masculine
that's
energy.
blue coming through, I think then.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
it was very, very masculine energy. Both of your dogs, the one you have now is a healer, but the one that passed is a healer as well. So those healing animals take on what we can't, so that we can find ways to move forward. I mean, they literally heal us. It's why I find it almost comical when people say they have dogs for training purposes, or they bring dogs in to heal patients. And I'm thinking to myself, this, you didn't design this. This is what animals are for. Horses, dogs, cats, they're all healers. They've come to help us. It's why our animals jump up on us when we're ill. It's why they
Mm.
cuddle with us. It's why you see so many cats and dogs when people bring babies home that cuddle right up with the baby. It's a healing or a teacher that is coming into that experience, into that person's life.
Oh, yes. I have felt that. Well, when I started this podcast February 2021, I had Blue with me, and he was not quite 11 yet. He was 10, and he was a 95 pound pit bull,
Mhm.
gray. So they call him Blues, right?
Yeah.
And Blue. And he'd had intermittent, m- issues, and he had cancer when he was 7, and I was able to have him have surgery, and I was like, okay, yeah, we still got lots more time, and so I invested in getting him the surgery, because it's kind of pricey. And he stayed with us through multiple moves. I mean, I've moved from, that was when I was in Stockton, California, and then we went to Idaho, then we went to Wyoming, and then we went to Reno, and then I had the divorce, and we moved into this really horrific little temporary apartment for 5 months, and he started to get sick.
Yep.
And this was like, I could feel it. Then he got better. We moved into this big house, and had people come in and live with us, and he loved all of them. And
Mhm.
then I planned my first real solo road trip, and I went up the coast of Oregon, cut over to Montana, stayed with some dear friends, came back down through Idaho with my family, and then went to Reno. And then like 2 days later, as part of a layoff. And that same day, I had to take him into the vet, because he had stopped kind of eating, and that was never the case for him. So as my roomie was watching him, I get him in anyway. We do all the tests, and he had, his cancer was progressed too hard. It was inside. He wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
do much. And that guy hung on for 4 weeks, and he never left my side. And I think why he stayed on well, he passed 2.5 weeks later. I mean, July 1st, from like June 10th, I think it was, when we found out, or right around that date. And what he kept telling me was I wasn't ready.
Mhm.
He was waiting for me, because he was my protector. There's nothing like falling to sleep. And he was the loveliest dog I've ever had been around. Cuddler. That breed is a really cuddly breed.
Mhm.
Even though there's a lot of bad stuff out there about them, I mean, that's the most cuddly dog I've ever had.
Yeah.
And he would sleep next to my leg and push anybody out in the bed if they were there. I mean, he was there. He was going to love on you and love on everybody. And finally, I had to let go.
Yes. I see this all the time with clients, especially near the end of a life.
Mhm.
Um, this is when I get a lot of calls. How do I know when it's time? How do I know? How do I make that decision? How do I know if I'm supposed to make the decision, or if I'm just supposed to naturally let them pass? And I can always say this, that your animal will let you know. Your animal always lets you know, but you have to be open to seeing the signs. And one, they always wait until you're ready. And if you're not ready, they will hold on until they absolutely can't anymore. But then they will wait for you to leave. They will not pass in front of you or pass when you're in the house. because they
Oh,
don't want you to experience the loss in that moment. They want you to come in after the fact.
yeah. Well, I
They will
had to
literally
make the
try to
decision
say,
because,
oh, yeah,
yeah, because
yeah,
he was in so much pain.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But oftentimes people will contact me and say, how
Hmm.
do I know?
Yeah.
Your animals will let you know if your animal is no longer walking, if your animal is no longer eating, if your animal can't jump on the bed anymore. There are
Yeah.
signs that
Yeah.
are coming that are starting to slow down. But I always say, trust your first thought. When it comes to connecting to your animal, literally, if you want to learn to communicate with your animal, it's a matter of asking a question. First, you have to really learn to trust your own intuition, right?
Hmm.
But learning how to communicate with animals is no different. It's really about closing your eyes, placing your hand on your heart and asking the question, and then getting quiet and allowing the first thought to come in. 9 times out of 10, it's the right one. It really is.
Yeah.
It Any thought that comes after that, whether it's the first thought, the 15th thought, or the 10,000th thought, that when
Hmm.
our brains start to go,
Yeah.
that's usually keeping us from our own truth out of fear or wanting to flee.
Uh,
So it's trying to talk
hmm.
us out of what the truth actually is. Oh no, maybe he'll have just a few more weeks. Oh no, maybe this or maybe that. Maybe he'll get better. Those kinds of things will come
Yeah.
in. So when I come in and I end up being the bridge for others so that I can help them connect to what is needed. And sometimes, again, it's just a behavioral thing. And sometimes people just have random questions like, I would just love to know what my animal's thinking, or I would love to know why, what is it
Well,
about? And it
yeah.
can be something as silly as, why does my dog chase his tail 3 times a day, every day at the same exact time? And it's like, well, why do you choose to go on your phone and play a video game, 3 times a day at the exact same time? Why do you check your emails? I mean, it's because it's fun. It's amusing. You know,
That's so funny. Just as we said that, you just have to ask them. Missy over here was sleeping and she just turned around and completely started staring at us.
what do you want to ask them? Like, boom, ask. Like, you have to be open to having that conversation. But here's the really cool thing is this can be done with wild animals too. And people don't understand that, is that, they think it's only domesticated animals. And for me, I can speak to all animals. And what's so awesome about the animal kingdom, and what a lot of people don't understand, is that we're actually gifted animals that walk with us throughout our lives as guides. And we call them, totem animals, spirit animals, power animals. And there's a difference between all three. But we're actually gifted these animals before we're even born. And they end up mirroring the characteristics of who we are or want to become. And what's so cool about everyday messages is the more that we learn about the animal kingdom and the messages and the medicine they carry, the more we can actually rely on them to help guide us in our everyday lives. Just like we would messages from, people see things on Facebook or social media and it's like a meme, and it resonates with them, right? And they're like,
Hmm.
ooh, that feels right. Same thing with animals. Depending on the animal that comes through in your everyday, it's very well a message for you. What's also cool to understand is, I remember you said a little earlier before we came on, you said something about having a fear of larger animals.
Hmm.
Sometimes the fear we have of animals is actually the medicine of the animal that we need the most in our lives.
Oh,
So many
that's,
people
yeah.
are afraid of
Hmm.
snakes, right?
Yes.
Automatically afraid of snakes. I know that I always was because of the movie Indiana Jones. If anybody saw Raiders of the Lost Ark with all
Oh,
the
yeah.
snakes, and
Yep.
why did it have to be snakes? And
Yeah.
then you got the snake crawling through the high-heeled shoe, and we're all like, yeah. Okay, so one, it's depicted, so we end up with this instilled belief that snakes are bad, right? We see their fangs, we hear about bites, things like that. So we have this automatic fear of snakes. But what I realized when I started to really work with snake energy was understanding that it wasn't the snake itself I was afraid of. It was what snake meant, what it stood for. And what it is grounding energy, learning about stillness, how to be still, releasing what no longer serves us, growth, transformation. Think about snakes, they shed their skin and awaken. So when we're afraid of change, when we're afraid of growth, when we're afraid of all of those things, it's
Oh,
usually the
that's
reason we're afraid
so
of snakes.
interesting that you say that because
Yeah. But when
I
we embrace
yeah, the
that,
more I walk, I thought,
right?
I was just up in Eastern Washington out and it was like a county park and yeah, lots of snakes out there.
Yeah.
Rattlers actually.
Yeah.
And I was always asking my sister, "Are you sure there's no, it's too cold for them right now. They're not out." But I was always watching for them. And now that
Mhm.
I'm in Flagstaff as I'm out, I'm watching for them. And actually when I went to Sedona, I was really vigilant about snakes because it's hot. I mean,
Yeah.
Flagstaff is still relatively cool and it was really yeah, that was snake weather out there.
Right. And
And
how
I
many
was
did you
watching it.
see?
Mhm.
How many did you actually see?
None.
Exactly. But the fear of seeing them
The
was there.
fear of it, yeah, a fear of it was really super powerful. Yeah, and I had had an experience, I think in my early 20s with a horse of I went with, my son's dad, and we were at this horse, and this horse was, um, like a stud.
Mhm.
And he got a little bit out of control and aggressive towards me. And luckily, my son's dad was, not intimidated whatsoever. But he
Right.
had to like back off that horse. And I've never really been comfortable around horses since then, even
Right.
though I know they're this majestic being and their stories. Except then when I lived in Reno, I lived in South Reno and last year, probably around this time, they have so many wild horses.
Yes.
And the neighborhood that we lived in was that they would come and they sleep on my yard, my front yard. And so when I was home during the day, I could go out there and there's a period of time where we went out there. I actually got to pet a wild horse, not for a long time, but briefly. And they would come and then I could walk with them around the neighborhood, keeping a safe distance, So because if they
Mhm.
get startled, they could run you over. But there was babies and it was I posted them on, social media, the pictures, and took some videos because they they helped me. I wasn't afraid. I was practical about keeping some distance because they are wild animals, but so beautiful. And then I wanna say maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago when I drove through a part of Yellowstone that's in Idaho, um,
Mhm.
was that there was all the bison are out
Oh,
and
yeah.
the babies, and you're just there watching them. And, I saw a moose from a distance, and it was just so, so peaceful. It just I just love Yellowstone, especially in the off, right before the summer season begins. There's so many of them. And, but what was really powerful was that I used to travel to Thailand for work and we would
Mhm.
go out and we're outside a couple hours outside of Bangkok. So we're in a more rural area. And they walk around there, the Asian elephants.
Yes.
And um there was this elephant that would come to this open restaurant with us. And they would
Mhm.
come and you could buy sugar cane. And I know they're kind of they're not mean to the animals, but they're definitely trained in working them, to come. And this is pretty much there's no tourist area. This is not a tourist area, but they're walking through and I got to feed this smaller elephant. And I had so many different experiences in Thailand with their elephants. I am in love with the Asian elephants.
Yeah.
I got to ride one
Elephants,
and yeah.
it's elephants are pretty spectacular. Elephants are the story keepers of Mother Earth.
Oh,
So, yeah. So it's actually, this is all science when it comes to, and I wish I had known we were going to talk about elephants, or I would have been able to fact check and get all this information for you, but you can look this up. So as we all know, Africa has these plates underneath that have to shift a very specific way for the continent to stay the way that it needs to in its highest good for all of Africa, right? There was a time when people started putting up, and back then, uh, elephants were able to just roam aimlessly and just do what they needed to do on their
Mhm.
own terms. Then all these people started putting up walls and borders so the elephants could no longer cross over. And over time, they actually noticed that the plates underneath the ground were no longer moving the way that they needed to, which was creating chaos in the countrysides. And it was because the elephants were no longer able to walk freely to shift the platelets in the ground the way that they needed to be shifted. So
Wow.
the cattlemen and the people started taking the walls back down and marked their elephants instead of keeping them in boundaries. And again, over time, they started to notice that things shifted again the way
Oh,
that it was meant to. It's kind
yeah.
of like when they took the wolves out of Yellowstone and
Mhm.
then they put the wolves back in. Same type of thing is the power of the animal kingdom and what they have the ability to do. People don't understand how important the animal kingdom is to our ecosystem because what we do consciously or unconsciously, like I said, or like you read my bio, we imprint and impact every other being and every experience on the planet, whether we're conscious to it or not. So by removing the wolves out of Yellowstone, we actually created chaos. And to the point where rivers were drying up, things were shifting,
Mhm.
entire species were dying. Even the trees, I mean, everything, the grasses, everything was just dying in Yellowstone. Then somebody decided to put the wolves back in Yellowstone. And there is an entire video series on this
Yeah,
that you can
I've read
watch.
this.
Yeah.
I was like making a
People,
note to myself because I
yes.
want to be able to find something for people. I've
Yeah.
read about this phenomenal that
They
happens.
put the wolves back into Yellowstone and
Mhm.
they actually watched the rivers shift and go exactly where they needed to go to be able to have the grasses and the trees re-nourish themselves and come back to life. It literally, just by putting the wolves back into Yellowstone, stabilized the park itself and the entire ecosystem within it, all because of the wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
people
so
don't even think
powerful.
about it, but,
Mhm.
like, it's so powerful, and, like, we have the whales in the ocean. They
Mhm.
are the record keepers of the ocean. They hold all of the information from, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and the messages that they carry are absolutely incredible, and if we ever lose the whales, we will lose so much of our oceans. And I was actually on a whale watch and had a conversation with whales. It was really a cool experience. I was in Plymouth, Massachusetts. This was my first ever whale watch. I'd never been on a whale watch, had never been called to be on a whale watch. But for whatever reason, my husband and I decided to go on a whale watch, and I brought my parents. We didn't tell anybody on board who I was, or, that I worked with Universal Energy and was an animal communicator. But we're heading out, and I guess you have to go pretty far out for the whales to be able to find you because it becomes shallow water. So the captain came on and said, we're going to go a couple miles out, and then possibly we might see, humpback whales, sperm whales, whatever it was, all these different whale species. He said, but we can never guarantee it. It is a whale watch. We'll see what happens. All of a sudden, like halfway into where we were really supposed to be, he comes on the speaker and says, I don't know what's happening, but the whales are actually coming to us. Like the whales were coming to the
Oh.
boat.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now again, nobody on the boat knows what's going on other than my husband and my parents. Um, and we get out to a spot. The captain finally has to turn off the boat. We are surrounded by 18 different whales.
Oh,
Yes.
oh my
And
gosh.
we had a marine biologist who happened to be on the boat that day. She had been a marine biologist, I think something like 30 or 40 years. She said that they were exhibiting behavior she had never seen before. They were recording it because they had never seen anything like this. The captain said that they had never experienced this many whales at one time. They didn't know what was going on. This was the best whale watch they ever had. And everybody's on, the right side of the boat where all the whales are. I'm on the left side of the boat with one whale, and the whale is just bobbing up and down right in front of me. I have full body chills.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, she was absolutely incredible. Everybody's on the other side of the boat. I'm in complete trance state, just enjoying this time and this conversation. And what she shared with me was really profound. And what she said is, as a record keeper of the oceans, I need to share with you that we need to take a stand. Without our oceans, we can't survive. And not just them. She was talking about us. And she said, you have to protect the plankton. And I didn't understand that. I was like, what? What do you mean we have to protect the plankton? What is that all about? And she just kept saying, you guys have to do your part and help us take care of the ocean, but make sure you protect the plankton. So my husband came over and he's like, hon, you have to come over and see. And then he saw this one and he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was like, hey, it's fine. All is fine. And she and I were just there. And then we went on our way. And it took us quite a while to be able to depart from the whales because they kept trying to follow us. And the captain was like, this is just incredible that this is happening. It wasn't until we got on the bus ride back to Connecticut that we shared with the guide on the bus who I was and what I did. And she was like, that was the most incredible whale watch I've ever been a part of. She said, can you just come on every one now? But anyway, what was so incredible about her message, the whale's message, was that it wasn't until I was watching, and I don't even remember what the TV show is, and I'm going to have to look it up. And I'm sure this is something you can look up too, but I didn't realize that plankton in the ocean has something to do with the ability for us to live with the oxygen we breathe. And without plankton, we will no longer be able to exist because of the oxygen levels. It absolutely blew me away to have that confirmation of what she said, just because I was watching one of those Earth channels type of thing. So yeah. I would be interested in if you look that up and find out, and I will look it up too, because I can't remember which TV show I was watching. I wish I did again.
Yeah, I will definitely Google that because that's really interesting. I know plankton has to do with, without knowing it too off the top of my head, is that it has to do with the whole ecosystem of what so many of the fish eat too, which is probably part of that whole cycle. And they're eating the fish. And
without plankton, the human race will be extinct without plankton. And it was like, it's decreasing more and more every year. And we're not being conscious of this. We're just
what a really powerful message.
Yeah. Like I said, wild or domestic.
Wow. And I feel that too. I had a experience. What year was it? I went to Kona, and it was February, I think, like 2013. I went to Kona with a friend and somebody I'd used to date, but now we were friends. And we went on, it was his life dream to go to Kona. And so we went on this vacation together, and I took a day and I went on a really small little boat, almost like a family type of boat. It's that small that you rent and to go out and to go swim with the dolphins, right? Yeah. Not the big, huge things, but it was small. There was another family. There was a small family, and we went out. And as soon as we started to go out too, there were so many dolphins following us. And they're like, we usually have some, but we've never seen this many dolphins come, and they followed us all the way out. We got to as far out as I guess they need to go, where they can, drop an anchor, and then we're able to get in the water and go be kind of close to them. So we get in the water, and I mean, I didn't get to touch a dolphin, but they were all like right there just swimming. And I remember when you put your head underwater, then the whales started singing.
Yeah.
And I just had this utopia moment of so much peace and healing, and like I was one with the ocean, right? Like I feel like a mermaid, like here they are, they're all coming to see me. And I never actually saw this whale. And I know February is where the babies are born in the Hawaiian Islands. And I know that they will come up from another trip, that they'll come and leave their babies by the boats
Mhm.
because of the boats can't turn on, and they
Right.
like leave them as babysitters, right? As they go off and do things, and then they come pick up their babies. I think it's a phenomenal over there. And but to be underwater and to swim so close, like they were right here, and then to have the whales there, I've just have had some of the most amazing experiences with animals. And they also have over in Kona the black turtles.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a picture, because you can only get so close to them, yeah,
Right.
legally. And so I have a picture where I'm sitting and I'm, legally from them. And they had so many of them out. And I have some beautiful pictures. And I remember sitting there going, just talking to them. I mean, some of them just went to sleep, they're just out there, leave me
Right.
alone. But it was just so grounding. I remember coming back from this trip with all of these interactions with these wild animals. And, you know, I didn't even know people could communicate with a wild animal. So I had no idea that I've actually been having these experiences myself. And in talking to you, I'm like, okay, yeah, I really was. They really were communicating with me.
Yes. Well, and what's so beautiful about dolphins, one, people are drawn to dolphins because dolphins embrace harmony and balance. So when I talk about experiences with wild animals and communicating, when you're experiencing, like, there's a reason you chose to go on that excursion to be with dolphins. So if you were to look back at your life, and I'm not saying you personally, but anybody who goes and decides to go see dolphins or elephants or whatever it is, um, think about what's happening in your life at that moment, what you're experiencing in your life, and you can kind of find the connections. What part of your life needed some harmony and balance, which is why you were drawn to go see the dolphins, and you don't even realize it, but it is a connection, because this is where universal energy comes in. Is we are all one, whether we understand that or not. It's the human ego that separates us from other beings as well as each other, where really it is one energy. We are all connected. It's why we have the ability to feel with others. We can empathize with other people's situations. It's because we all come from one energy. So when we are experiencing that with animals, we are one with them. It's the human ego that constantly pulls it apart and says, no, I'm not part of that. I'm not part of this. I'm not part of that. Of course you are. You're part of the experience. You're part of the oneness in the ocean with those animals. You're choosing to make yourself separate. But if you actually looked at the reason why you were there in the first place, you might find the realization and the understanding of why you chose to go and be with those turtles on that specific day. That might have been a time in your life where you're realizing that you needed to slow down a little bit. You needed to find time to just take the pause and go at your own pace. So that might be one of the reasons why you were attracted to seeing a turtle, or like the elephants.
Mhm.
The elephants are all about connection and community and protection. It could have been a time in your life where you were really thriving, or not thriving, but really needing that connection, that that feeling of being part of something greater than yourself, maybe needing a little bit of protection like a family would give you. And that's the energy of elephants. And like with bison is that beautiful reminder of abundance and gratitude, to step into that life and be abundant, live the energetic frequency of abundance. And seeing those bison is a reminder of that. So what's so beautiful is when you start to become more conscious of the animals around you on your daily life, you start to realize you actually are connecting with them and communicating with them, but most of the time it's energetically. You have to go much deeper to learn to actually have a conversation, but you are connecting on a very, very, very real level, whether you understand it or not.
Oh, isn't I know I love to hear that. I'm sure everybody listening is like, oh, I know I feel so connected. And that's why.
That's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
Because
So,
every single animal is here
mhm.
to show us something. It's either to share a message with you or to share their medicine. So whether it's a hummingbird that shows up in your yard, reminding you to find the nectar in life, even in the struggles, because hummingbirds struggle most of their lives. Think about how hard they have to work to get from point A to point B with those wings. But they absolutely drink the nectar of life. Like they are always buzzing around in a happy way, right? You see them fluttering about.
Yes. I just
Yeah,
saw one last Sunday. I was
yeah,
at a friend's house outside here in Flagstaff playing corn, corn,
cornhole.
cornhole. God, I love
Yeah,
that game.
cornhole. Yep.
And we were out there, but before we were sitting eating, and she had moved her hummingbird feeder closer, and this
Yeah,
beautiful hummingbird, oh my gosh, was there, and it came back a couple times, and yeah, I
yeah.
guess there's a lot of hummingbirds here in certain areas of Flagstaff too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's no different than people who see like a lot of hawks. We have a lot of hawks around here. Some people are completely oblivious to the animals around them. They just do their everyday stuff and don't even notice what's happening around them. For me, hawk always shows up. Well, one, it's one of my totem animals, but if I am in my own head and I am overthinking something, a hawk will show up to remind me to take a step back and look at things from a different perspective.
That's so interesting. You
Each
know, I
and
have a hawk story recently too. See, I'm constantly seeing animals.
mhm,
Um, shortly, I would say probably before I moved here. So real short, when I was up in um, Eastern Washington and staying at my sister's. And we looked out her kitchen window, and it's in a track. This is track, right? Track homes. And it's like hard desert. And then there's this open area. And then there's the houses that are just a little bit above.
right.
And on that fence was this hawk. And I looked over there and I told we're in the kitchen window, and I called her over. I said, look at that hawk. It's so beautiful. She goes, wow, never noticed that hawk before. And I'm like, I think he's looking at us, right? And I think, well, now I'm like, oh yeah, I think he was.
Mhm.
But yesterday I'm driving down in Flagstaff, and I look over with where I live, and it's we're in the middle of a forest. Um, but I'm going down, like just a regular residential road with houses up and then houses down, and there's a deer.
Mm.
I haven't quite seen a deer in town yet. That was the first time. And so I was like, "Oh yeah," because I think a deer is one of my totem animals is and
Do you
um
know if it was a white-tailed deer or a mule deer?
it was not,
It
what?
was probably a mule deer if it was out in Arizona. I don't
Yeah.
think you guys have a lot of white-tailed deer. Um, So a mule deer, if they show up and it's a message, it might be the medicine or it could be the message.
Mhm.
So the message of mule deer is that right now you tend to be wandering with not a lot of focus because of too many outer experiences that you are having right now. So it's about just understanding that it's okay to wander. It doesn't mean you're lost.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that's the message. If it were the medicine, like if you needed inspiration or you needed motivation, you would call on mule deer for that. You would ask mule deer to work with you and say, mule deer, please help me find the inspiration or the motivation to propel myself forward into whatever the next phase of my life is, things like that.
Oh, I love that. I'm writing notes.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that down.
And if it were a totem, if a totem animal is the characteristics of you, and I'm reading this right out of this book, it would mean you maintain a balance of the masculine traits of mastery, authority, and protection with the feminine characteristics of love, nourishment, and surrender, yet relate most closely to those associated with your gender. So if that feels like you or the characteristic of you, it's very possible that deer is one of your gifted animals from before birth.
Oh, that's
But
beautiful. Yeah.
yes, so we have power animals. Those are the ones that show up in our lives when we need them the most, when we need that medicine the most. And they walk with us through different times of our lives. Like when I was starting a family, all of a sudden I had this absolute obsession with tree frogs and geckos, like whether they were real or like statues or little figurines. I just wanted them everywhere. And it was because I was going through such a huge transition in my life that it was the medicine of those two animals that was coming in to support me. And I didn't even realize it at the time. I just all of a sudden had this infatuation with all these animals and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I mean, they were everywhere, like from children's little play toys to pictures to wall sculptures. Absolutely everything was geckos and tree frogs. And it was because I was going through this transition and needed that extra support going into motherhood. And I didn't even realize that.
Oh,
So
that's
there are
so
many
interesting.
times,
Uh-huh.
yeah, many times when certain things come into our lives in the animal kingdom, like children. This is a really great way for children or parents to realize what one of the gifted animals was for their children, that was given to them prior to their birth. Does their child have a favorite animal? Do they have the stuffed animal of it? Do they have pictures of it? In my room growing up, everything was tigers. I absolutely was obsessed with tigers. And when I was 18, I went to the wild animal park and had my first real confirmation that I was communicating with a wild animal. And my mother was there and she witnessed this interaction between myself and this Bengal tiger. And once I had that conversation, once I fulfilled that communication, my need to have tigers surrounding me all the time just dissipated. And it was quite
Oh.
incredible. So my entire childhood, everything, and this was before like, the Google search, so where you could just put it in a cart and order it.
Yeah.
This was like being gifted things with tigers on it. This was having tiger posters. This was having tiger pencils. Anything that had a tiger on it was gifted to me. My entire room as a child was tigers. And I never understood why I could dream about being inside as a tiger walking through a rainforest. I could feel it. And it wasn't until I had the interaction in person with one at the park that I completed what I needed with that connection and I was able to move on.
Oh, that's so interesting because children, there's so many children who, yeah, they can barely talk, but they're drawn to like the stuffed animals, like certain.
That's because they are still completely spiritual beings. They haven't lost touch with their connection to universal energy. They haven't lost their connection to Mother Earth. They haven't lost connection to the plants and the rocks. It's why children pick up all kinds of stuff. They pick up pine cones and pine needles and sticks and rocks, and they want to just collect all this stuff. And what do parents do? No, put that down. No, you can't have that. No, you're not bringing that into the house. what we're doing is actually ripping that spiritual side out of those children. We're starting the conditioning process so that they forget. And then what happens as we get older, we lose our spirituality. And then what happens? We end up having what the clinical world would call a breakdown or a midlife crisis. What it really is the universe tapping us on the shoulder saying, do you remember who you were even born as? Would you like me to show you? Because there's a whole different way to live. You just forgot how.
Yeah.
Because the kids know how to take the pause. The kids know how to be in the moment, completely in awe of what it is they are experiencing outside. It's the adults who have been conditioned to forget that rush them, that tell them no, that tell them to stop.
Yeah, that's so, what's so beautiful about that and how it all comes full for me full circle is that, I do know that, like from year what birth well pre-birth till about
Right.
6 or 7, right? We're in that whole theta brain spot because when we're doing energetic healing, that's where all those things are so subconscious and can get locked in there with some of our own beliefs that we're not even aware of, or fears or phobias and
Right.
trauma. And then, and what's so interesting is that the whole science, like the whole psychologist, even part of it, why they have like free preschools and free all this stuff for the children at a super young age because they how much emphasis is put on those first like 6 years of children's lives and how it kind of like all blends together with everybody seems to understand how important those years are, but yet there's still so much, that happens to these, unfortunately to children. And but being able to even go out and connect and play in the dirt and play with the rocks and it it's so beautiful. I know, my son used to be drawn to just bears. It seems to be really common. People would gift him bears and he would have bears. We went to a build a bear factory, I mean, and then I think, okay, was he really drawn to bears or was he just that was just a really common animal, thing that's around for bears. Um, and now what's so interesting, he lives in Bozeman, Montana.
Mhm.
There's bears out there when he's out hiking and he loves nature and,
Yeah.
does all of that. And there's bears up there for sure.
Mhm. What kind of bear was he attracted to? Was it a black bear, a grizzly bear, a polar bear? Because all the bears are very different in
They were more like
messages.
brown bears.
Brown bears.
Mhm.
Let's see, brown bears. So the message for brown bear is to stay grounded no matter what the experience. It's time to bring your dreams and plans to fruition. It's always important to trust your instincts. Enough of your hiding. It's time to come out and meet the world. Don't just wait for something to happen. Take action.
Wow.
That were his. Now that was the message. Now, if it were one of his totem animals, one of the animals gifted to him, it could be because he's a very powerful healer. Whether his focus is physical, emotional, or spiritual healing, he is meant to be a healer of some kind here during his human experience. He needs periods of reclusiveness to like much like an introvert needs time to like reflect, needs time to go within, have quiet time so that they can expand themselves into the energies that are outside in the world. Winter is definitely a place for him to spend a lot of time in introspection, like going within, taking time to slow down, nourish his mind, body, and soul so that he can plant the seeds of his life to move forward come spring type of thing. And he's very independent, preferring to do things on him by himself or for himself instead of having other people do things for him. So very independent. And also like the soul of a survivor, somebody who can survive just anything that is thrown at them tends to be the
That's so him.
yeah.
That's so interesting. So how do we find out, there's the totem, there's the power animals.
Yeah. So totem animals, and this is tricky because we have to be cautious when it comes to honoring the Native American culture, and some of them tend to get very upset when we talk about totem animals if we're not native, native lineage. So I always say just honor that in understanding that this is the culture of the Native Americans, but I fully believe that we are all gifted these animals. But just honor the fact that it comes from a lineage you may not understand, and just say thank you when using terms that are not ours,
Mhm.
right? So a totem animal is the animal that has been gifted to us prior to our birth, that walks with us throughout our entire lifetime, that mirrors the characteristics of who we are or who we are looking to become in this human experience. That's your totem animal. A power animal is an animal that you call upon to ask for assistance. So, if you're looking for guidance, if you're looking for healing, there's certain animals that you can call in to help you with whatever it is you are in need of. And then we have our spirit guides, and the spirit guides are the messengers. They're the ones who show up in our daily lives exactly as we need them. Like we're in a complete rush, and all of a sudden a turtle starts to cross the road, and you're like, son of a gun, I am in a rush. I have somewhere to be. This turtle is literally in your path, slowing you down, telling you, take your time, stop rushing, be present, just relax and be still. It's okay.
Oh,
That's
I love those explanations. Um, Kelly, I think, and I love that you are calling out the Native American lineage.
Yeah, it's very important to
Mhm.
honor what we don't know or what we don't understand,
Mhm.
um, and give them the credit and the love and the honor that they so deserve for such beautiful spiritual awakenings that they share with us, even when it isn't necessarily everyone's lineage.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. So if anybody's listening and they are of that lineage, I would love to have you on too, you know, and hear more of their learning and their teachings and what they're here to help us still understand. So thank you for that. Um, I'm really if somebody is interested in learning more about, like, how do you find out what your possible totem or power animal, or even like who do I want to call on if I am, I'm working through some health stuff right now, right? And so if I want an animal that I can call into when I'm doing my meditation with my guides, or my angels and my whole spirit team, that comes with me. How could I find that out? I mean, how does somebody know? Like, I know for protection, I can call in Archangel Michael,
Right.
right? Like, he's my bud,
Yeah.
and
All about protection and strength. Yes.
yeah, and so he's one of my best friends, I think, just they're always right there hanging out with me. Um, and so since protection and safety is one of my life things that I'm working through here for
Mhm.
whatever reason, and so he's constantly with me. And I know that, and I know I have a lot of ancestors who are also with me for that exact same reason, right? That I'm safe. I'm safe here. I'm safe to be visible. I'm safe to be myself.
Mhm.
And as I go through that, if I'm looking like, okay, now what animals, or how could somebody identify for their own stuff? How do you find that out? Where?
So, I always tell my clients who are beginning to learn about the animal kingdom, one of the best books out there is by Stephen D. Farmer, PhD, and it's called Animal Spirit Guides. And what I love so much about Stephen's way of looking at it is he's very understandable for all audiences. So even a child could pick up this book and read it and understand it. And he separates the difference between an animal and the messages it could bring, or it might be the medicine, or it also has the totem animal meaning. So you can go through, and in the back of the book, there's actually an index where you could look up health or chronic pain or forgiveness or self-love or whatever it is, and it will list the animals that will work best, obviously with the first animal being the most profound. And then you can go back into the book and look and see if that's the right animal to call in for that medicine. That's one of the ways you can do that. To
Mhm.
find your totem animal, usually you have to go through a guided meditation or a sacred journey to help you meet that guide. And I do offer that as
Mm.
one of my services for people, that they can go through and do a guided meditation, whether in person or Zoom, where we can lead them through that meditation, where we can ask for that animal to come through. And then I have my animal wisdom candle line. And actually, with that, that is a beautiful way to call on a specific animal to bring it into meditation, because you can actually use the candle, set your intention with the candle that has already been with me and my intentions. And then you light the candle and ask the animal to come with you into meditation with the light of the candle. So you can do that as well.
Wow, that would be super powerful. I was just think when you were saying that, I wasn't thinking of like I'm sitting there and I'm going to light a candle and meditate. The vision I got, the image I got was that, oh, that would be really powerful as I'm writing things that I'm releasing on paper that I'm gonna um burn safely. It's usually outside, like with a bucket or something, but that I would could light it with this candle and set the intention with it to also help release. That's the image I got when you were talking about that, of
Yeah.
how I would use something, like the animal wisdom candle line. I
Mhm.
mean, besides just having a candle burning, which I love candles and burn them a lot.
I love
So
I love earth friendly, earth conscious candles that
mhm,
have intention.
yes.
I
Yes,
don't love any candle. I
yeah,
don't
I
love
I
ones
should I
all
should
the
clarify that too. Yeah, I stopped using a long time ago. I went away from all of the chemicals that are
Yeah,
in.
the fragrances, they're
Yeah,
horrible. So
yeah.
what I do with mine is what I tell people. People often ask, well, what's your fragrance? I do not put a fragrance in mine, because every single person is called to a very different fragrance, especially in meditation. So what you can do, and what I do, is upon lighting it, when the wax starts to melt a little, you can pour in a little bit of your favorite properly sourced essential oil into the burning wax. And then you have whatever scent it is you want in the candle. And you can actually do that over and over, because once the wax dries up, that fragrance, that scent is no longer really in there. So you can burn it again and add a whole different fragrance for next time, which is
Oh,
what I,
really?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. That's a nice little trick there.
Yes. But again, it depends on the candle.
Mhm.
Obviously, you need to make sure that it's an earth-friendly candle. Mine are soy-based with, 100%
Mhm.
organic wicks. And then $1 from every one of my candles actually goes back to conservation projects around the world, that help Mother Earth and the animal kingdom. So
Oh, I love
when,
I'd love to
yeah,
hear that.
so it's giving back as well.
Yeah. One of the intentions I set when I began the podcast and my coaching was that when I got to a point where I'm able to first take care of my basic needs,
Yeah.
is that I was going to either begin a nonprofit or find one that was in alignment with me, but it had to do with well, two of them had to do with animals. One of them was those wild horses in South Reno. They
Yeah.
need help, right? And so I know that they were doing a lot of powerful things because the population keeps growing and unfortunately they get hit, right?
Right.
Because we're in their area. And also was that, but the one that I was super interested in doing for myself was that, because I'm a huge lover of pit bulls, is
Mhm.
that, and they get, so much, they're so loving. And where you're able to match a woman who's been through like PTSD, trauma, have safety stuff,
Yeah.
where they are with an animal who is matched with them, a pit bull,
Mhm.
who is a rescue, who's been through some training. They get some training, and we match these two together, and we create housing
Yeah.
for them because there's discriminations of being able to move into certain places. And usually, if
Absolutely.
you're in that situation, you could probably be more in the renting part of, or maybe you never want to own a property, but that they're able to be matched with them, because there is nothing like sleeping with a pit bull back next to you on your leg to help you feel into that safety and then get that physical hug
Yeah.
they can give you to help that. And so now that's not the right now, it's a vision. It's not something that's actually materializing yet, but it will.
You said
Because
yet, that's all that matters.
yeah, it's out there, because
Yeah,
I
you
know that
said
my
yet.
boy changed everything for me, and so I'm interested in knowing if somebody is drawn to, like, how do you know, people do want to help the animals, right? Like, how do you find, or which ones do you have any recommendations for those that are they really are helping?
Right. Yeah, there are many
The
out there.
money is getting to to actually help the animals more than the
So right.
administrative.
So I always tell people stay away from PETA, stay away from, the SPAC.
Mhm,
It, those are, conglomerates that are paying their CEOs and their board of directors. The money is not going to the animals. But if you look up places like the Jane Goodall Institute, obviously she is doing wonders and continues to be a steward of Mother Earth and the animal kingdom. She's one of my absolute icons that I hope to mirror as well as she does one day. And that's the organization I'm working with now with my candles.
mhm,
Uh, is I do that, but any local shelter in your area, if you look into even your local pound, your local, like here we have the Connecticut Humane Society. So if you have a local Humane Society, not the Humane Society of the United States, that's another conglomerate. But if you have local shelters and local places like that for local animals, absolutely do what you can. And it's not necessarily, everybody's all about, monetary. It's not necessarily monetarily that you're helping these. It's spreading the word. It's collecting blankets. It's, buying an extra thing of dog food and donating it. You can do very, very little things to create a huge impact without it all having to be about money. You could literally just help spread the word on social media over an animal that is looking for a home. I mean, people don't understand the impact they have just by doing that, because you are literally putting that picture in front of who knows how many people. And just by doing that, they may find their forever home. It might be donating leashes, extra dog toys, things like that. But if you are looking for international, like wildlife, you definitely want to look into private sanctuaries,
mm,
throughout the United States or beyond. Don't be afraid to read up on them and look into where the money goes, because there's an actual site, um, and I don't have it on hand, but I can get it to you, Debbie, that has the top organizations um, in the world when it comes to being able to donate, where their money goes. Basically, it's a you're following the money chain to see
mhm.
that the money actually is going to the animals. Obviously, these big corporations and everything, they do need operational money, But when you see your CEO is making millions of dollars a year and the animals are still, suffering, then you know that there's an issue.
Yeah, I know that I had found an organization, I think it's in Tennessee, that
There's
takes
an
in
elephant
elephants.
sanctuary. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
an elephant sanctuary there.
And you
Yeah,
can't go visit the elephants,
no,
which I love that because that means they're not opening up for
protected.
like
Yep.
tourists. They're actually, it's a old home
Yes.
for elephants out in
Yeah.
Tennessee. And when I discovered that, I was like, oh, I want to go there.
Yeah.
No, I have a friend, Christina, who goes and visits wolf sanctuaries,
Hmm.
and she
Yeah.
helps at wolf
We have,
sanctuaries.
wolf, we have a wolf sanctuary in upstate New York. It's about 2.5 hours away from us. And you are allowed to go and visit. You are allowed to walk in the woods with them. You're allowed to do like campouts in the middle of the night with them. It's pretty amazing. It's to a very small number, but their money actually goes to the wolves themselves. The ones I say to be really cautious about are the big cat rescues. It seems to be more and more that they are becoming more of a circus type of environment where the more money they make, the more they're actually either breeding them. And that's not what we want to support. We want to make sure that we're not supporting these roadside places, but supporting something like the San Diego Zoo. They're
Mhm.
actually doing research. They're actually doing good with the things that they do. So just be really cautious and look at what they're doing. Something like SeaWorld, they're not a rehab. They're not a sanctuary. They're promoting and making money off of these animals where zoo animals are very different. They weren't especially now. I mean, back in the day, yes, but now zoos are more about uh, responsible breeding, but making sure that the animals are staying healthy and living their best life, knowing that they're never going beyond, and they're not in cages.
Mhm.
Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
the San Diego Wild Animal Park.
Yeah. Which is where
Wow.
I saw the tiger, which is where I had my experience with that tiger when
Mhm.
I was 18. So I'm not going to age myself, but it was a very long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was prior to the security that they have now with the fencing. I was able to, well, I crawled over some bushes and whatnot, but I was right at a chain link fence with that tiger.
Oh,
It's not like that anymore.
no, they have glass and they
Right.
have a lot of stuff because of,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
responsible parents, I think. But
Right.
mhm. Yeah,
But
I love their
18
giraffes there.
wasn't going to stick my hands through. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't like, "Ooh, let's pet the kitty."
Yeah. Well, this has been such a delight, Kelly.
Thank
I thank you, and I thank all the listeners for all my emotional stuff that has come up with talking about my own animals, my
Animals see
experiences.
into
Yeah.
our souls. And when we talk
Mhm.
about our animals, we open up that side of our heart space that allows that vulnerability and that authenticity to just shine so brightly because that's what they do. So that's why people get so emotional when they talk about their animals, because
Ugh,
our animals see us in ways that no human possibly can.
yeah. Yeah. I see that as my miss has moved from here to now she's by my feet, and yeah, she's sound asleep. Like she didn't even make a noise jumping down. It was kind of funny, which usually, sometimes you hear her little woo woo that she does. So it's kind of funny that she stayed asleep. But uh, thank you so much. And now, if somebody's interested in connecting with you, and maybe they want to do one of those journeys to figure out their own, you know, the sacred journey for their own totem, or learn more about your animal wisdom candle line, how can they reach you? Or for
My
anything, all the
website,
other stuff that you do?
yeah.
Yeah.
So my website is beyondwordsandwisdom.com. So it's the word beyond, the letter N, wisdom.com. So it's not the word and. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not hard to find. I'm Kelly L. McCarthy. I have both a business page and a personal. And I'm a completely open book, so happy to, accept as many friend requests as I can. You can email me at kelly@beyondwordsandwisdom.com, or find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, any of those,
They're all the places.
all the
Yeah.
places. I'm in all the places.
Oh, that's beautiful. And yeah, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. And I hope somebody reaches out, with whether it's for themselves or, learning more about or even their own soul connection with their beloved dog or cat
Absolutely.
or horse or whatever. Right.
Snake, bird, frog,
Right.
fish.
Oh, so beautiful. Well, thank you again, Kelly.
Thank you. I really appreciate being on.